They say you can smell death before it comes for you. That night, all Lucy Gray could smell was her stepmother's expensive perfume and the sharp bite of betrayal. The carriage wheels screamed against the frozen road, each jolt sending Lucy's heart crashing against her ribs. She pressed her face against the frosted window, watching the last lights of Ashenmoor fade behind her, the only home she'd ever known disappearing into the midnight fog. This wasn't supposed to be me. The wedding dress they'd shoved her into still smelled like her stepsister Vivian. Lilac and vanilla. The scent of someone who'd never been told no, who'd never scrubbed floors until her hands bled, who'd never been invisible. Until tonight, when Vivian had refused to be visible at all. Lucy could still hear her stepmother's venomous whisper 3 hours ago, "You'll go in her place." The contract says eldest daughter of House Gray. You're technically the eldest. The Alpha King will never know the difference until it's too late. Too late for whom? The iron shackles around Lucy's wrists were lined with velvet, a cruel mockery of gentleness. They'd been clamped on the moment she'd tried to run, the moment she'd realized they were serious. Her stepfather had watched with those cold, calculating eyes as the guards dragged her to the carriage. Considerate payment, he'd said, fingers drumming against his brandy glass. For 18 years of charity, we never owed you. Charity. As if she hadn't earned every scrap of bread, every threadbare blanket. As if her mother's death when Lucy was 5 had somehow made her less than human in their eyes. Now she was being delivered like livestock to the north, to the Blood Moon Pact territory, to a king whose name alone made grown men flinch. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome to your new obsession. I'm so glad you're here. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I love connecting with you all. And hey, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do me a favor and smash it now. Trust me, you're going to want to catch every twist in this story. Now, let's dive in. Alpha King Caelan Thorne. The stories about him were whispered in taverns and around firesides, each one darker than the last. They said he'd killed his father in a challenge before he turned 20, that he'd crushed 3 rebellion packs and displayed their alphas' heads on spikes as a warning, that his eyes were the color of a wolf's rage, silver and merciless, and that he'd never taken a mate because he'd rather rule alone than share power with anyone. They said he'd agreed to this marriage for political alliance only, a bridge between the northern and southern territories, a treaty sealed in a wedding contract that Vivian was supposed to fulfill. Beautiful, perfect, wolfed Vivian, whose white wolf had emerged on her 16th birthday in a shower of light and power. Vivian, who was probably in some tavern right now, laughing with her secret lover while Lucy rode toward her doom. The carriage hit another rut, and Lucy's head cracked against the wall. She tasted blood. "Please," she whispered to the guards sitting across from her, their faces hidden behind wolf-marked helmets. "Please, there's been a mistake. I don't have." Silence. The voice was flat, bored. "The Alpha King doesn't care about your protests. You're a Gray. The contract is signed. That's all that matters. That's all that matters." Lucy closed her eyes, fighting the sting of tears. She wouldn't cry. Not for them. Not for the family that had sold her like a damaged piece of furniture they were eager to discard. But fear, cold and sharp as the winter air seeping through the carriage walls, wrapped around her throat like a noose. Because there was one thing everyone knew about Alpha King Caelan Thorne that made this nightmare infinitely worse. He hated weakness. And Lucy Gray was the weakest creature in the shifter world, a human girl born to a werewolf bloodline, but cursed with no wolf of her own. No transformation. No healing. No strength beyond what her fragile human body could offer. A wolfless bride for the most powerful alpha in the realm. The carriage suddenly lurched to a stop, so abrupt that Lucy slammed forward, chains rattling. Through the window, she saw them, torches blazing in the darkness, illuminating massive stone gates carved with wolves mid-hunt. The air itself felt different here, thicker, wild, humming with a power that made her skin prickle. The Blood Moon Pact territory. One of the guards opened the door, and winter wind knifed through Lucy's thin dress. Snow had begun to fall, soft and silent, covering everything in white. How poetic. White for a wedding. White for a funeral. Maybe they were the same thing. Out. The guard's hand was rough on her arm, hauling her into the snow. Her bare feet, They hadn't even given her shoes, sank into the frozen ground, and the cold was so intense it burned. Ahead, the castle rose like a predator crouched in waiting, all black stone and sharp towers, windows glowing like watching eyes. Wolves lined the courtyard, dozens of them, their forms shifting between human and beast in the torchlight. All of them stopped to stare as Lucy was dragged forward. She heard the whispers immediately. That's the Southern Bride? She's human. The king will tear her apart. Maybe that's the point. Lucy's legs nearly buckled, but she forced herself to keep moving, to keep her chin up even as humiliation scorched through her veins. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. Not yet. The castle doors opened, and warmth rushed out, along with a scent that hit Lucy like a physical blow. Pine and smoke. Snow and steel. Something wild and ancient that made every nerve in her body scream both danger and something else. Something she didn't have a name for. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might shatter her ribs. And then she saw him. Alpha King Kalen Thorne stood at the top of the grand staircase, and Lucy's breath simply stopped. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet of raw, predatory power wrapped in black leather and furs. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, and his face was all sharp angles and brutal beauty, the kind of face that belonged on a conqueror. But it was his eyes that paralyzed her. Silver. Glowing. Fixed on her with an intensity that felt like being stripped to her soul. And in those eyes, Lucy saw something that terrified her more than his reputation, more than the chains, more than the wolves circling her like sharks scenting blood. Recognition. Then his expression shuddered, going cold as the winter outside, and when he spoke, his voice was death itself. This is what they sent me? A wolfless, broken little human. He descended the stairs slowly, each footstep echoing like a judge's gavel. They insult me with a substitute? Lucy opened her mouth to explain, to apologize, to beg, but no sound came out. Kalen stopped 3 feet away, towering over her, and the scent of him wrapped around her like chains far stronger than the iron on her wrists. His jaw clenched, a muscle ticking, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes, something that looked almost like pain, before it vanished. Take her to the North Tower, he commanded, his gaze never leaving hers. Lock her in the bridal chamber. No one is to enter except on my order. The North Tower. Lucy had heard of it, the place where Kalen kept his enemies before he decided their fate. My king, one of the guards hesitated. The wedding ceremony is postponed. Kalen's voice dropped to a growl that reverberated through the stone walls. Until I decide what to do with this mistake. He turned away, dismissing her as if she were nothing, and Lucy felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart, that had broken years ago. Something else. Something she hadn't known she still possessed. Hope. As the guards dragged her away, up the winding stairs toward her prison, Lucy caught one last glimpse of the Alpha King. He stood frozen at the base of the stairs, one hand pressed to his chest, his face twisted in an expression she couldn't decipher. And his eyes, those terrible, beautiful silver eyes, tracked her until she disappeared from view, burning into her like a brand. Like a promise. Or a curse. The North Tower room was beautiful in the way a gilded cage is beautiful. Lucy stood in the center of it, still shackled, still shivering, watching snowflakes drift past the arched window. The fire in the massive hearth did nothing to warm the ice that had settled into her bones. Or maybe that ice had always been there, and she was only now noticing it. The door had locked behind the guards with a finality that echoed in her hollow chest. A mistake, he'd called her. As if she didn't already know. As if her entire existence hadn't been one long apology for taking up space in a world that had no use for her. Lucy moved to the window, her bare feet silent on the plush carpet, so different from the cold wooden floors she'd scrubbed in her stepfather's house. Below, the courtyard buzzed with activity. Wolves in human form moved with that fluid grace she'd always envied, their bodies humming with the power she'd never possess. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass, watching her breath fog the surface. What am I even doing here? But she knew the answer, surviving. It was all she'd ever done. Her mother's face flickered through her memory, soft and sad, always sad, even when she smiled. Rachel Gray had been wolfless too, a rare curse in their bloodline. She died when Lucy was 5, pneumonia taking what the wolf gene couldn't protect. And Lucy's father, heartbroken and desperate, had remarried within a year. That's when Lucy learned what it meant to be invisible. Her stepmother, Constance, had swept in with Vivian, 6 years old, and already showing signs of alpha bloodline. Beautiful, confident, complete. Everything Lucy wasn't. And slowly, methodically, Constance had erased Lucy from the family portrait. The family dinners became too formal for Lucy. Her bedroom became a storage room. Her name became the girl, or that one, when they bothered to acknowledge her at all. She'd survived by being useful. By being silent. By making herself so small that maybe, just maybe, they'd forget she was there and she could simply exist in the margins of their lives. Instead, they'd remembered her just long enough to trade her away. You'll go in her place. A sound at the door made Lucy spin around, heart leaping into her throat. But it wasn't the Alpha King. It was a woman older, maybe 40, with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that assessed Lucy like she was evaluating damaged goods at a market. "I'm Maven," the woman said, her voice crisp and efficient. "The king's head housekeeper. I've been instructed to make you presentable." Presentable. As if anything could make this situation acceptable. Maven moved through the room with brisk efficiency, setting down a tray of food Lucy's stomach was too knotted to want, then producing a key for the shackles. The moment they fell away, Lucy rubbed her raw wrists, watching Maven warily. "The king is meeting with his council," Maven continued, laying out a simple gray dress on the bed, nothing like the elaborate wedding gown they'd forced her into. "They're deciding what to do with you. There's debate." Lucy's voice came out rough. "What kind of debate?" Maven's expression flickered, something almost like pity. "Some want you sent back to your family in disgrace. Others want the contract voided and compensation demanded." She paused, her gaze sharp. "And some think you should be executed for the insult to the king." The room tilted. "Executed? You're a breach of contract. A substitution without consent. In pack law, that's grounds for..." Maven stopped herself, seeming to reconsider. "But the king hasn't decided yet." The king. Caelan Thorne, with his silver eyes and that moment when he looked at her like she was something that hurt him just by existing. "Why did he put me here?" Lucy asked suddenly. "The North Tower. This room specifically." Maven's hands stilled on the dress. "Because it's the farthest point from his chambers. And because..." She met Lucy's eyes directly. "Because it's where he puts things he doesn't trust himself around." Before Lucy could process that cryptic statement, Maven moved to the door. "Change. Eat. The king will summon you when he's ready to pass judgment. And girl..." She paused in the doorway. "Whatever you do, don't try to run. The wolves would catch your scent before you made it past the gates, and they're not as controlled as the king." Then she was gone, and Lucy was alone again with her fear and the dress that looked suspiciously like mourning clothes. 3 floors below, in the war room, Caelan Thorne was losing his mind. He stood at the head of the table, both hands braced on the oak surface, fighting the urge to flip it and everything on it. His counsel argued around him, voices rising, tempers flaring, but he could barely hear them over the roaring in his blood. Her scent. It clung to him like a second skin, invaded his lungs with every breath. Pine needles and honey. Rain on stone. Something innocent that made his wolf snarl and pace inside his chest, demanding things Caelan couldn't afford to want. "My king, this is a clear violation." That was Garrett, his beta, ever practical. "We should send a battalion south and take House Grey's head for this insult." Ronan, his enforcer, always eager for blood. "Or we keep her and demand triple the dowry as compensation." Lyria, his treasurer, ruthlessly logical. But none of them understood. None of them had felt what happened when that girl, Lucy, had stepped into his castle. The bond had snapped into place like a bear trap around his soul. Mate. The word his wolf had screamed the instant her scent hit him. The absolute certainty that had brought him to his knees internally even as he'd forced himself to stand there, cold and cruel, and call her a mistake. Because she was a mistake. She had to be. Caelan had spent 32 years believing he'd never have a mate. His bloodline was too dominant, too violent. The moon goddess herself seemed to have decided he was better off alone, and he'd made peace with that. Built an empire on the foundation of that isolation. And now this? A wolfless human girl, sent as a substitute, triggering the one thing he'd thought impossible? No, he wouldn't accept it. Couldn't. Because accepting it meant admitting that fate had just handed him the ultimate weakness, something his enemies could use to destroy everything he'd built. Enough. His voice cut through the arguing like a blade, and silence fell instantly. Leave me. All of you. They hesitated, exchanged glances, but obeyed. Even in their concern, they knew better than to push him. When the door closed, Kalen let his head fall forward, exhaling hard. What the hell am I supposed to do with you, Lucy Gray? Send her back? The thought made his wolf rage. Kill her? His hands had trembled when he'd even considered it. Keep her? That was suicide for both of them. But underneath all of it, beneath the logic and the fury and the fear, was one undeniable truth. From the moment she'd looked at him with those defiant eyes, still shackled and terrified but refusing to break, something in him had recognized something in her. Not just the mate bond. Something older. Deeper. Like he'd been waiting his entire life for someone to see him, not the king, not the monster, but the man underneath who was just as scared and alone as she was. And that terrified him more than any army ever could. The summons came at dawn. Lucy had spent the entire night curled in the chair by the fire, unable to bring herself to sleep in the massive bed. Every creak of the castle, every distant howl, had kept her rigid with fear. Now, as pale light filtered through the window, Maven returned with 2 guards. The king will see you now. Lucy's legs barely held her as she stood. She changed into the gray dress, braided her dark hair to keep her hands busy, and tried to prepare herself for whatever judgment awaited. But how did you prepare for your own execution? The walk through the castle was a blur of stone corridors and hostile stairs. Wolves stopped to watch her pass, their eyes glowing with predatory interest. She heard the whispers. Wolfless. Insult. Won't last the week. They led her to a great hall with soaring ceilings and banners bearing the blood moon crest, a silver wolf beneath a blood-red moon. At the far end, on a throne of carved blackwood and wolf pelts, sat Kalen Thorne. He looked different in daylight. No less dangerous, but somehow more real. The shadows under his eyes suggested he'd slept as poorly as she had. His jaw was tight, his massive frame coiled with tension, and those silver eyes tracked her every step with an intensity that made her skin burn. The mate bond, though Lucy didn't know to call it that, hummed between them like a living wire. Lucy Gray. His voice filled the hall, deep and commanding. You stand accused of fraud, breach of sacred contract, and insulting the crown. How do you answer? Lucy's throat closed. She forced words out. I didn't choose this. They forced me. Silence. He stood, and the sheer power radiating from him made her step back instinctively. I don't care about your excuses. You are not the bride I contracted for. You are wolfless, powerless, and utterly useless to me or this pack. Each word landed like a physical blow. Lucy felt her eyes sting, but refused to let tears fall. She'd survived 18 years of being called useless. She could survive this. However, Kalen continued, descending from the throne with slow, deliberate steps. Sending you back creates a political problem. Your family has already received half the dowry. They'd likely just pocket it and claim I broke the contract. He stopped 10 feet away, and Lucy could see the war raging behind his controlled expression. So I'm giving you a choice. His eyes locked on hers. Option 1. I void the marriage, send you back, and go to war with your pack for the insult. Many will die, including, most likely, your stepfamily. Despite everything, Lucy flinched. She hated them, but death? Option 2. Kalen's voice dropped lower, more dangerous, you stay. We complete the marriage ceremony tonight. You become my queen in name only, a political arrangement, nothing more. You'll have a title, protection, and comfort. But you'll never have my affection, my trust, or my attention beyond what appearances demand. The hall was utterly silent. Choose, he commanded. Lucy's mind raced. Go back to nothing? To being invisible and abused? Or stay here, equally unwanted but at least alive? At least not starving in a servant's quarters? But there was something else. Something in the way Kalen looked at her, like he was fighting himself, like proximity to her caused him physical pain. She didn't understand it, but she felt it too. This strange pull, this ache that made no sense. I'll stay, she whispered. Something flashed in Kalen's eyes, relief? Anger? Both? Then it's decided. He turned away sharply, as if he couldn't bear to look at her another moment. Maven will prepare you for the ceremony. Will. The doors exploded inward. A woman swept into the hall, and Lucy's breath caught. She was stunning, all curves and confidence, with cascading red hair and amber eyes that glowed with wolf light. Her dress was cut to display every asset, and she moved like she owned the castle. "Kaelin, darling," she purred, completely ignoring Lucy's existence. "Tell me this is a joke. You're not actually going through with this farce." "Charlotte." Kaelin's tone was warning sharp. "This doesn't concern you." "Doesn't concern me?" Charlotte laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "I've been your lover for 3 years. I've bled for this pack, fought beside you, shared your bed. And you're going to throw that away for this human." The words hit Lucy like ice water. "Lover. Of course. A man like Kaelin wouldn't have been alone." "What we had is over," Kaelin said flatly. "It ended the moment the contract was signed." "Because of her?" Charlotte finally looked at Lucy, and the hatred in her eyes was pure venom. "She's nothing. Weak. Breakable. She won't survive a month here, Kaelin. The pack will eat her alive. Then they'll answer to me." His voice was arctic. "She's under my protection now. Anyone who touches her dies. That includes you, Charlotte." For a moment, Lucy thought the other woman would attack. Charlotte's hands curled into claws, her wolf rising so close to the surface that her eyes blazed gold. But then she smiled slow and cruel. "Fine. Marry your little pet. But when she breaks, and she will break, don't come crawling back to me." She leaned closer to Kaelin, voice dropping to a whisper that still carried through the hall. "And you might want to ask yourself why the mate bond is screaming at you over someone so pathetically beneath you. What cosmic joke is fate playing?" Kaelin went rigid. Charlotte's smile widened, and she swept out as dramatically as she'd entered. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lucy's mind reeled. Mate bond? What did that mean? And why did Kaelin look like he'd been struck? He turned to her slowly, and for the first time, she saw something raw in his expression. Something almost vulnerable. "The ceremony is at moonrise," he said quietly. "Maven will explain what you need to know." He paused, jaw working. "And Lucy? Stay away from Charlotte. She doesn't make idle threats." Then he was gone, striding from the hall like he was escaping a trap, leaving Lucy standing alone with a single, terrifying realization. She'd just agreed to marry a man who was bound to her by something neither of them wanted. And his former lover had just declared war. The wedding ceremony was nothing like Lucy had imagined weddings could be. There was no joy, no celebration. Just cold efficiency and barely concealed hostility as Maven dressed her in a gown of silver silk that felt like wearing moonlight. The fabric clung to her slim frame, and someone had woven winter roses into her hair. She looked like a bride. She felt like a sacrifice. "The ceremony binds you legally," Maven explained as she fastened the final clasp. "In pack law, you'll be queen. But..." She hesitated, meeting Lucy's eyes in the mirror. "The mate bond is different. That's spiritual. Permanent. And if what Charlotte said is true..." "What is a mate bond?" Lucy interrupted, desperate to understand. Maven's expression softened with something like pity. "It's fate's design. The moon goddess chooses a perfect match for every wolf, someone whose soul complements theirs. When true mates meet, the bond snaps into place. It's absolute. All-consuming. Most wolves spend their entire lives searching for their mate." Lucy's hands trembled as understanding crashed over her. "And Kaelin, he thinks I'm his mate? I think he knows you are. And I think it's tearing him apart. But why? Isn't that supposed to be a good thing?" Maven's laugh was bitter. "For most wolves, yes. But for a king? A mate is a vulnerability. A weakness enemies can exploit. And you." She gestured to Lucy. "You're human. Wolfless. Everything his pride and his position say he shouldn't want. The bond doesn't care about logic, though. It just is." The words settled in Lucy's chest like stones. She thought of the way Kaelin looked at her, that war between hunger and revulsion, need and rejection. The way he'd put her as far from his chambers as possible, like she was something dangerous. Because to him, she was. "Come," Maven said gently. "It's time." The ceremony took place in the castle's inner courtyard under a sky heavy with stars. Hundreds of wolves gathered in human form, forming a circle around a raised stone platform. Torches blazed, casting dancing shadows, and the air hummed with power that made Lucy's skin prickle. Kalen stood at the center in black leather and furs, looking every inch the warrior king. His face was an unreadable mask, but his eyes, those devastating silver eyes, tracked her approach with an intensity that stole her breath. An elderly wolf, his hair white as snow, presided over the ceremony. His voice rang out, "We gather to witness the union of Alpha King Kalen Thorne and Lucy Gray, binding the northern and southern territories in blood and bond." Lucy climbed the platform on shaking legs. Up close, Kalen's scent wrapped around her pine and smoke, wild and intoxicating. She saw his jaw clench, his hands fist at his sides, like touching her would undo him. The elder produced a ceremonial blade. Blood to blood, soul to soul. "Offer your hands." Kalen extended his palm first. The blade cut swift and clean, and dark blood welled up. Then Lucy offered hers, flinching only slightly at the sharp sting. The elder pressed their bleeding palms together, and the moment their skin touched, Lucy gasped. Heat. It exploded through her like lightning, racing up her arm and flooding her entire body. She heard Kalen's sharp intake of breath, saw his eyes flare bright silver, felt his hand spasm around hers like he wanted to either pull her closer or shove her away. The bond, that invisible thread Maven had described, pulled taut between them, singing. "By moon and blood I bind you," the elder intoned. "What the goddess has joined, let no force sever." Kalen's voice was rough gravel. "I accept this bond." Lucy barely managed to whisper, "I accept this bond." The words felt like shackles and freedom all at once. The elder released their hands, and Kalen immediately stepped back, putting distance between them. But Lucy could still feel him, an ache in her chest, awareness of his every breath, every heartbeat that matched her own. "The union is sealed," the elder announced. "Long live the queen." The pack's response was mixed. Some held in approval. Others remained silent, their hostility palpable. And Charlotte, standing at the edge of the crowd in a dress of deep crimson, smiled like she was watching a lamb being led to slaughter. The feast afterward was torture. Lucy sat beside Kalen at the high table, painfully aware of every inch of space between them. He spoke to his council, to visiting alphas, to everyone except her. She was decoration, a chess piece on display. But she felt every time his attention flickered her way, every time his hand twitched toward hers before he stopped himself. The bond hummed constantly now, a living thing demanding acknowledgement they both refused to give. "You look lovely, Your Majesty," a voice dripped with false sweetness. Charlotte stood beside the table, a goblet of wine in hand. Her smile was all teeth. "Thank you," Lucy managed, throat tight. "Such a shame you can't shift. The pack runs are quite spectacular under the full moon. But I suppose you'll have to sit them out. Stay behind while the rest of us are truly alive." Charlotte's eyes gleamed with malice. Must be lonely, being the only human in a castle full of predators. Kalen's voice was ice. "That's enough, Charlotte. I'm just making conversation with our new queen." She leaned closer to Lucy, voice dropping. "Fair warning, little human, accidents happen in wolf territory. A misstep on the stairs. A wrong turn in the forest. It would be such a tragedy if something happened to you." Before Lucy could respond, Kalen stood so abruptly his chair crashed backward. The entire hall fell silent. "Charlotte, you're dismissed from court. Effective immediately. Leave. Now." Shock rippled through the crowd. Charlotte's face went pale, then red with fury. "You're banishing me?" "For her. I'm protecting what's mine." The words came out as a growl, and Kalen's wolf flashed in his eyes. "Threaten my mate again, and banishment will be the least of your worries." My mate. He'd said it out loud. Claimed her publicly. Charlotte's goblet shattered in her grip, wine and blood dripping to the floor. For a heartbeat, Lucy thought she'd attack. But then she spun and stalked from the hall, leaving a wake of whispers. Kalen slowly sat back down, his breathing harsh. He didn't look at Lucy, but his hand, still bleeding slightly from the ceremony, rested on the table between them. After a moment, Lucy did something insane. She placed her smaller hand over his. His entire body went rigid. His eyes snapped to hers, wide with something between shock and hunger. "Thank you," she whispered. "For protecting me." For the first time since they'd met, Kalen's mask cracked. His voice came out raw. "Don't thank me yet, Lucy. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." but he didn't pull his hand away. And the bond between them flared so bright, Lucy could almost see it, a silver thread binding her heart to his, whether either of them wanted it or not. Lucy woke to screaming. She bolted upright in the massive bed, Kaelin's bed, where Maven had insisted she sleep after the ceremony, though the king himself had never appeared. The screams echoed through the castle walls, accompanied by snarls and the sound of breaking glass. An attack. She scrambled out of bed, still in her nightgown, and ran to the door. It was locked from the outside. Of course it was. She was a prisoner as much as a queen. Let me out. She pounded on the wood, heart hammering. What's happening? No answer. Just more screams, closer now, and the distinctive sound of wolves in combat, growls and snapping jaws that made her blood run cold. Then silence. Worse than the screaming. Lucy pressed her ear to the door, straining to hear anything. Footsteps. Running. A voice shouting orders that sounded like Kaelin's, and the door exploded inward. Lucy stumbled back as Kaelin filled the doorway, and her breath caught. He was covered in blood splattered across his face, his bare chest, his hands. His eyes blazed pure silver, his wolf so close to the surface. Are you hurt? His hands were on her before she could answer, running over her arms, her face, checking for injuries with a desperation that shocked her. I'm fine. Kaelin, what? Assassins. His voice was guttural, barely human. They got past the outer guards. 4 of them made it to the residential wing before we stopped them. His hands tightened on her shoulders. They were coming for you, Lucy. They knew exactly which room you were in. The words took a moment to penetrate. Me? Why would? Because you're my weakness now. He released her abruptly, pacing like a caged animal. Because the moment I claimed you as my mate, I painted a target on your back. Every enemy I have, every pack that wants to challenge me, they all know the fastest way to destroy me is to destroy you. Lucy's legs gave out. She sank onto the bed, trembling. Did you kill them? 3 of them. Something flickered in his eyes, regret? The 4th I kept alive. He's being questioned now. He paused, jaw working. He talked. Said they were hired by someone inside the castle. Someone who wants you dead and me weakened. Charlotte. The name hung unspoken between them. We don't have proof yet, Kaelin continued, reading her thoughts. But Lucy, you can't stay here. This castle, this pack, it's not safe for you. I need to send you somewhere protected, somewhere. No. The words surprised them both. Lucy stood, lifting her chin. I'm not running. I didn't choose this, but I'm not going to hide while people die protecting me. Kaelin stared at her like she'd lost her mind. You're human. Fragile. One assassin with a blade and you're dead. Yes, I know. Fire surged through her veins, anger at being treated like a helpless child, at being everyone's problem, at being weak in a world that valued nothing but strength. I've been powerless my entire life, Kaelin. I'm not asking to be powerful now, but I won't be locked away like some porcelain doll while you fight my battles. Something shifted in his expression. He took a step toward her, then another, until he was close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. The blood on his skin should have terrified her. Instead, she felt that pull again, the bond urging her closer. You're either incredibly brave, he said softly, or incredibly foolish. Maybe both. His hand came up, and for a heartbeat she thought he'd touch her face. But he stopped himself, fist clenching in midair. The mate bond is getting stronger. Every hour we're together, it tightens. Can you feel it? She nodded, not trusting her voice. It's going to keep getting worse. The bond wants us to. He trailed off, but she understood. Complete the mating. Claim each other fully. But I can't. If I let myself care about you, if I let this bond consume me the way it wants to, I'll become reckless. I'll choose you over my pack, over my duty, over everything I've built. And that will get us both killed. Then what do we do? Lucy whispered. I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him. But tonight, you're sleeping where I can protect you. No more separate rooms. No more locked doors. You stay within arm's reach until we figure out who's behind this. Within arm's reach. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, something warm bloomed in her chest. Kaelin turned toward the door, then stopped. His shoulders tensed, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. When I felt them breach the castle, when I realized they were heading for you. I've never felt fear like that, Lucy. I've faced armies without flinching. But the thought of losing you before he cut himself off, jaw clenching. The bond is making me weak. Or strong, Lucy heard herself say. Strong enough to protect what matters. He looked back at her, and the raw vulnerability in his eyes stole her breath. You matter. That's the problem. Before she could respond, Maven appeared in the doorway, her face grave. My king, the prisoner is ready to talk. He's asking for clemency in exchange for the name of his employer. Kaelin's expression shuddered instantly, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the ruthless king. Take Lucy to my chambers. Postcards. No one enters without my permission. His eyes found hers one last time. I'll be back before dawn. Then he was gone, and Lucy was left with the scent of pine and blood and the echo of 3 words that changed everything. You matter. Maven led Lucy through torchlit corridors to the king's private chambers, a sprawling suite that was somehow both luxurious and Spartan. Weapons decorated the walls alongside battle maps and territorial charts. The bed was massive, draped in furs, and Lucy's heart hammered at the thought of sharing it with him. The king hasn't let anyone into these rooms in 3 years, Maven said quietly, preparing the fire. Not since he swore off taking another lover after Charlotte became too possessive. She glanced at Lucy. You're the first person he's truly protected since he took the throne. That means something, Your Majesty. Even if he won't admit it. After Maven left, Lucy stood at the window, watching snow fall over the kingdom that was now somehow hers. She thought about the assassins. About Charlotte's threats. About Kaelin's fear that caring for her made him weak. But she also thought about the way he'd touched her, gentle despite the violence, desperate despite his control. The way he'd said my mate like it was both a curse and a prayer. And she realized with startling clarity, she was done being weak. Done being unwanted. Done being the mistake in everyone's story. If this bond was real, if fate had truly chosen her for the most powerful alpha in the realm, then maybe it was time to stop apologizing for existing and start fighting for the life she'd never dared to want. Even if that life terrified her. Even if it might kill her. The door opened near dawn. Kaelin entered, freshly washed but exhausted, and stopped when he saw her curled in his chair by the fire. The prisoner gave up the name, he said heavily. It wasn't Charlotte. Relief and confusion warred in Lucy's chest. Then who? Your stepmother. His eyes were dark with rage. Constance Grey hired the assassins. Apparently, if you die here, she inherits the dowry and can claim I violated the contract by failing to protect you. She gets rich, I get weakened, and House Grey avoids any consequences. The betrayal shouldn't have hurt. Lucy had known her stepfamily hated her. But this? Hiring killers? She's being dealt with, Kaelin added. My wolves are already heading south. Then he crossed the room and did something that stopped Lucy's heart. He knelt in front of her chair, bringing them eye to eye. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You deserved better than this. Better than me. Better than all of this. Lucy's hand moved before she could stop it, touching his blood-stained jaw. He froze, eyes widening, but didn't pull away. Maybe, she whispered. But this is what fate gave us. So, what do we do with it? His hand covered hers, holding it against his face. And for the first time, he didn't fight the bond. He leaned into it. 3 weeks passed like a fever dream. Lucy learned what it meant to be Queen of the Blood Moon Pack, the ceremonies, the council meetings where she sat silent but present, the way wolves bowed their heads as she passed. But more than that, she learned Kaelin. The way he took his coffee black at dawn while reviewing reports. How he trained shirtless in the courtyard, his body a weapon of pure grace and power. The rare smile that transformed his harsh features when she said something that surprised him. The nightmares that woke him gasping, and the way he'd reached for her in the dark before remembering himself. They hadn't completed the mating bond. Hadn't even kissed. But they orbited each other like binary stars, drawn together by gravity they couldn't escape. Until the morning, everything shattered. Lucy woke alone, unusual, since Kaelin typically left after she was awake. A note lay on his pillow in sharp handwriting. Council emergency. Stay in the castle. Something felt wrong. The air itself seemed charged with menace. She dressed quickly and found Maven in the corridor, her face pale. Your Majesty, you need to stay in your chambers. There's been a complication. What kind of complication? Before Maven could answer, shouting erupted from the great hall. Lucy ran toward it despite Maven's protests, her heart hammering. The hall was packed with wolves, all focused on Kalen at the center. And beside him, in chains, was a young man Lucy had never seen, maybe 20, with Kalen's dark hair and those same devastating silver eyes. A brother? This is ridiculous, the young man snarled. I'm your blood, Kalen. Your only living family. And you'd choose that wolfless pet over me? Kalen's voice was deadly calm. You tried to have her poisoned, Kieran. Don't insult me by denying it. Lucy's world tilted. Poisoned? The wine at last night's dinner, Garrett, the beta, explained, noticing her arrival. It was meant for you, your majesty. Wolfsbane mixed with nightshade. Would have killed you within hours. His expression was grim. Kieran was seen bribing the servant who brought it. Kieran's eyes found Lucy, and the hatred in them was scorching. You've destroyed everything. Before you arrived, I was his heir. His successor. Now he talks about legitimate heirs, about the children you'll give him. He laughed bitterly. Children from a wolfless human. It's a joke. An insult to our bloodline. You're the insult, Kalen growled. I gave you position, responsibility, trust. And you betrayed it for jealousy. It's not jealousy. Kieran's composure cracked. It's survival. You're weak now, brother. Everyone sees it. You can't make a decision without thinking of her first. Last week you canceled a raid because it might have taken you away from the castle for 3 days. 3 days. The old Kalen would never. The old Kalen didn't have a mate to protect. Exactly. Kieran's chains rattled as he lunged forward. She's made you soft. And soft kings don't survive. I was doing you a favor. Once she was gone, you could go back to being the alpha king everyone feared instead of this lovesick fool. The words hung in the air like poison themselves. Kalen's expression was carved from stone, but Lucy saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The fear that Kieran was right. The penalty for attempting to murder the queen is death, Kalen said quietly. But you're my brother. My last blood relative. So I'm offering you exile instead. Leave the territory. Never return. And live knowing you threw away everything for nothing. Nothing. Kieran's laugh was unhinged. She's already destroyed you, Kalen. You just don't see it yet. But you will. When your enemies close in because you're too distracted protecting one weak human. When the pack challenges your leadership because you've gone soft. When she dies anyway because she will, brother, humans always do, and you're left with nothing but ashes and regret. Guards dragged Kieran away, still shouting curses. The hall emptied slowly, wolves whispering, doubt spreading like wildfire. Lucy stood frozen, Kieran's words echoing in her mind. She's already destroyed you. Kalen finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes broke something inside her chest. Regret. And worse, agreement. You think he's right. They were in his study, the door closed, the space between them feeling like an ocean. Kalen stood at the window, back to her, shoulders rigid. The raid he mentioned, I did cancel it. And the trade negotiations I postponed last week. And the territorial dispute I haven't resolved because it would require me to travel north for a fortnight. His voice was hollow. Everything I do now, I measure against one question. Will this put Lucy at risk? That's not weakness, she said desperately. It is weakness. He turned, and the anguish on his face stole her breath. I've ruled for 12 years, Lucy. I built this kingdom on strength, on being willing to sacrifice anything for the greater good. But now, his hands fisted at his sides. Now I can't think straight. Can't make the hard decisions. Because all I can think about is keeping you safe. Then let me help you. Let me learn to defend myself, too. You're human. The words exploded from him. You can't shift, can't heal, can't survive what this world throws at wolves. And I can't, his voice cracked. I can't watch you die. I've seen what happens to wolves who lose their mates. It breaks them, destroys them from the inside. And I can't be that weak. Not when thousands depend on me. Lucy felt tears burn her eyes. So what are you saying? The silence stretched like a blade. Mavens prepared a cottage in the Southern Territories. Neutral ground, far from political conflicts. You'll have guards, comfort, everything you need. He wouldn't meet her eyes. We'll remain legally married for the alliance. But you'll be separate. Safe. And I can go back to being the king this pack needs. You're sending me away. The words came out broken. I'm saving your life. Finally, he looked at her, and the pain in his silver eyes was devastating. And mine. Because if I keep you close, Lucy, one day my enemies will figure out the truth, that I'd burn the world for you. And they'll use that. They'll hurt you to control me. And I'll let them. I'll sacrifice everything, my pack, my kingdom, my honor, just to keep you breathing. Would that be so terrible? She whispered. Yes. The word was final as a grave. Because I'm a king before I'm a man. And kings don't get fairy tale endings. He crossed his desk, pulled out a document. Sign this. It grants you autonomy, resources, protection. You'll want for nothing. Except you, Lucy thought, but didn't say. Her hand shook as she took the quill. She could fight this. She could scream, rage, refuse. But what good would it do? He'd already made his choice. She signed her name, each letter feeling like a goodbye. When do I leave? At dawn. His voice was barely audible. I won't be here to see you off. It's easier that way. Easier. As if any of this was easy. As if her heart wasn't tearing itself apart. Lucy set down the quill and walked to the door. She paused, hand on the frame, and said without looking back, Kieran was wrong about one thing. I didn't destroy you, Kaylin. You're destroying yourself. And you're using me as an excuse. Then she left and didn't look back to see if her words had landed. Because it didn't matter. By dawn, she'd be gone. And the mate bond that had promised her everything would become just another scar on her heart, proof that even fate could get it wrong. Lucy didn't sleep. She sat by the window in Kaylin's chambers, former chambers now, watching stars fade into dawn. Her bags were packed. Maven had cried while helping her, whispering apologies Lucy couldn't accept because none of this was Maven's fault. It was fate's fault. Or maybe Lucy's, for being foolish enough to hope. The bond in her chest ached like a wound, pulling her toward wherever Kaylin was hiding. She wondered if he felt it too, this wrongness, like trying to live with half a soul. A knock at the door. Not Maven. The footsteps were heavier. Garrett entered, Kaylin's beta, his usually stern face troubled. Your Majesty, the carriage is ready. But before you go, there's something you should know. Lucy stood, wrapping her cloak tighter. What is it? 3 things happened after you left the king last night. Garrett moved to the window, looking out over the kingdom. First, he destroyed his study. Every piece of furniture, every document. I've never seen him lose control like that. Pain lanced through Lucy's chest, but she said nothing. Second, Charlotte returned to the castle. Snuck past the outer guards. She went straight to the king's chambers and... He paused, jaw tight. She propositioned him. Told him she could make him forget you. Help him move on. Lucy's hands fisted in her cloak. And? He threw her out physically. Told her if she ever came near him again, he'd have her executed for treason. A ghost of a smile crossed Garrett's face. Then he exiled her permanently. She's gone. Relief and anguish warred in Lucy's heart. And the third thing, she whispered. Garrett turned to face her fully. He went to the sacred grove. The place where alpha kings go to commune with the moon goddess. His eyes were intense. He hasn't done that since the day he took the throne. And Your Majesty, he was there all night. He's still there now. Lucy's breath caught. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth before you leave. Garrett stepped closer. The king thinks he's protecting you by sending you away. He thinks he's being strong. But I've served him for 8 years, and I've never seen him weaker than he was last night. Sending you away isn't saving either of you. It's killing you both slowly instead of all at once. He made his choice, Lucy said, hating how her voice broke. He made the choice he thought a king should make. Not the one his heart wanted. Garrett's expression was fierce. You know what I think? I think real strength isn't choosing duty over love. It's finding a way to honor both. And I think you're the only one brave enough to show him that. Before Lucy could respond, Maven burst through the door, breathless. The grove, something's wrong. The guards are saying there's a disturbance. A howl split the morning air. Not a normal wolf's cry, but something anguished. Agonized. Kaylin. Lucy was running before she made the conscious decision, flying through corridors and out into the frost-covered grounds. Garrett and Maven ran behind her, but she didn't slow. The bond pulled her forward like a rope around her ribs, screaming that something was wrong. The sacred grove was a ring of ancient trees at the castle's edge. As Lucy burst through the tree line, she saw him. Kaelin knelt in the center of the clearing, head thrown back, body rigid with pain. His skin rippled, wolf trying to break through, but trapped somehow. Silver light surrounded him, not natural light, but something divine and terrible. What's happening to him? Lucy gasped. Garrett's face was ashen. The moon goddess. She's responding to his prayer. An elder Lucy recognized from her wedding appeared from the shadows, his eyes glowing white. When he spoke, his voice echoed with power not his own. The king asked for release from the mate bond. He begged to have his feelings severed so he could rule without weakness. No. But bonds forged by divine will cannot be broken by mortal request. To sever a mate bond is to sever the soul itself. He will die or be driven mad. There is only one way to end this. The elder's glowing eyes fixed on Lucy. The bond must be accepted. Fully. Without reservation. By both parties. Or it will consume him. Lucy didn't think. She ran to Kaelin, falling to her knees before him. His eyes snapped open, silver bleeding to black, wolf and man at war. Lucy, no, his voice was shredded. Get away. I'm losing control. I don't care. She grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. Listen to me, Kaelin Thorne. You're not weak for caring about me. You're not weak for being afraid. You're human. Even kings are allowed to be human. I'll fail them, he choked out. I'll choose wrong. Then choose wrong. Tears streamed down her face. Choose me and figure out the rest. Stop trying to be perfect and just be real. Be the man who destroyed his study because sending me away hurt. Be the man who's terrified of losing me. Be mine, Kaelin. Not the kingdom's. Not duties. Mine. I don't know how, he whispered, and she saw it then. The little boy who'd lost his father, who'd taken a throne too young, who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten what it felt like to be vulnerable. Then let me show you. She pressed her forehead to his, their breath mingling. Accept the bond. Accept us. Accept that loving me doesn't make you weak, it makes you whole. Lucy. Say it, she demanded. Say you choose me. Say you choose us. The silver light flared brighter, burning. Kaelin's whole body shook, the moon goddess herself waiting for his answer. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything. And Kaelin, Alpha King of the Blood Moon Pack, the man who'd never bowed to anyone, let the walls crumble. I choose you, he breathed against her lips. I choose us. I choose this bond, this fate, this terrifying, impossible love. I choose you, Lucy. Today. Tomorrow. Every day until I die. The light exploded. Pure silver fire erupted from where their skin touched, racing through both their bodies. Lucy gasped as warmth flooded her, not painful, but overwhelming. She felt Kaelin's heart as if it were her own. Felt his fear, his love, his absolute devotion crashing into her like a tidal wave. And something else. Something impossible. Power. Surging through her veins. Her back arched as energy built inside her, pressure mounting until, crack. Something broke. Something that had been locked inside Lucy her entire life shattered like glass. And for the first time in 21 years, Lucy Gray felt her wolf wake up. No, she gasped. That's not, I'm wolfless. I've always been. Kaelin's eyes widened, silver returning and glowing bright. The bond. It's not just connecting us. It's completing you. The elder's voice rang out. A true mate bond shares everything. Strength. Power. Soul. The king's wolf recognizes its mate and calls to the one sleeping within her. She was never wolfless. Only dormant. Waiting for him. Lucy felt it then, a presence inside her, primal and fierce. Her wolf. Not gone. Never gone. Just waiting for the bond that would set her free. She looked at Kaelin, saw her own wonder reflected in his face, and laughed, wild and joyous and free. So what now? She asked. He pulled her into his arms, finally allowing himself to hold her the way the bond had been screaming for. Now we figure it out together. The kingdom, the threats, all of it. No more running. No more hiding. His voice dropped to a growl. You're mine, Lucy. And I'm yours. And anyone who tries to come between us will learn exactly how ruthless this king can be when he's protecting what he loves. Then he kissed her. And the bond sang. The kiss broke something open between them, a dam holding back weeks of restraint. Kalen's hands tangled in Lucy's hair, pulling her closer as if he could merge their souls through touch alone. The bond blazed white-hot, and Lucy felt her newly awakened wolf purr with satisfaction. "Mine," it whispered. "Ours." When they finally pulled apart, breathing hard, the sacred grove had fallen silent. The silver light faded, leaving only dawn breaking through the ancient trees. "We need to get back to the castle," Garrett said urgently from the tree line. "Word will spread fast about what just happened." Every wolf in the territory felt that power surge. He was right. Lucy could see wolves emerging from the castle, drawn by the bond's awakening. Some looked odd, others afraid, and a few looked hungry. Kalen helped Lucy to her feet, keeping her tucked against his side. "Stay close to me. Your wolf is awake, but she's untrained. Until you learn to shift properly. They'll see me as vulnerable," Lucy finished. "I know." His jaw tightened. "Not for long. I'll have every trainer in the kingdom working with you." He paused, silver eyes intense. "But Lucy, you have to understand, what just happened changes everything." A dormant wolf awakened by a mate bond? That's ancient magic. Legendary. It marks you as someone truly chosen by the moon goddess. "Which makes me an even bigger target," she said quietly. Yes, he didn't lie to her. "But it also makes you powerful in ways we're only beginning to understand." They made it halfway across the courtyard when the attack came. Wolves poured from the shadows, not castle guards, but rogues, their eyes wild and their movements coordinated. At least 20 of them, all converging on Lucy and Kalen with deadly intent. "Ambush!" Garrett roared, shifting mid-leap into a massive gray wolf. The castle guards responded instantly, but the rogues had planned this perfectly, timed for the moment when Kalen would be vulnerable, distracted, separated from his main forces. Kalen shoved Lucy behind him, his own shift rippling through him in a heartbeat. His wolf was enormous, pure black with those distinctive silver eyes, radiating alpha dominance. He tore into the first rogue with brutal efficiency. But there were too many. Lucy pressed her back against the castle wall, watching in horror as more rogues flooded the courtyard. They weren't just trying to kill Kalen, they were specifically targeting her, breaking through the defenders to reach her position. A rogue got through, lunged for her throat. Lucy's wolf screamed inside her, demanding release. She didn't know how to shift, had no training, but instinct, pure, primal instinct, took over. "Let me out." The transformation was agony and ecstasy combined. Bones cracking, reshaping, for erupting from skin that had never known the change. Lucy threw back her head and shifted. She was smaller than the rogues, lean and quick, with fur the color of moonlight and eyes that glowed the same silver as Kalen's. Her wolf form was built for speed, for grace, for... The rogue slammed into her, jaws snapping for her throat. But Lucy was faster. She twisted, using the rogue's momentum against him, and her teeth found his jugular. The taste of blood filled her mouth, foreign and terrible and somehow right. The rogue fell. "Lucy." Kalen's voice in her mind, the mate bond allowing them to communicate as wolves. "Behind you." She spun. 2 more rogues. She didn't think, just moved, her new wolf body responding to instincts coded into her DNA. Duck, weave, strike. She wasn't as strong as them, but she was fast. Unpredictable. And she was furious. Furious at every person who'd ever called her weak. Every moment she'd been told she was worthless. Every second she'd believed she didn't belong. Her wolf channeled that rage into violence, and it was glorious. Kalen fought his way to her side, and together they were devastating. He was power and dominance, she was speed and precision. The bond linked their movements until they fought like one creature with 2 bodies, anticipating each other's actions perfectly. The rogues began to fall back, realizing their surprise attack had failed. But then the courtyard gates exploded inward. A massive wolf entered, bigger even than Kalen, with a scarred muzzle and 1 milky eye. Behind him, at least 30 more rogues. And riding on the giant wolf's back, somehow impossibly, Kieran. He wore silver chains around his wrists, the kind that burned wolves, and his eyes were wild with madness. "Did you really think exile would stop me, brother?" he screamed. "I found allies. Rogues who hate your rule. Who want to see you broken." The scarred wolf shifted beneath him, and Lucy recognized the creature from stories, Maddox the Exile, a former alpha who'd been cast out for unspeakable crimes. A wolf so dangerous that even mentioning his name was forbidden. The girl awakened her wolf. Maddox's voice was gravel and death. Perfect. Her heart will taste sweeter with power in it. Kalen's growl shook the stones. He shifted back to human form, standing naked and unashamed, radiating such raw dominance that several rogues whimpered. You dare attack my mate? My queen. His voice dropped to something barely human. I'll paint these walls with your blood. You'll try, Kieran laughed, unhinged. But you're distracted now. Weak. You can't protect her and fight us both. So choose, brother, save your kingdom or save your mate. Which one dies today? Maddox lunged for Lucy while simultaneously, half the rogues attacked Kalen. No. Time seemed to slow. Lucy saw Kalen's agony, the impossible choice being forced on him. Saw him start to move toward her, leaving himself exposed to the rogues at his back. And she realized, Kieran was right. As long as their enemies could use her as leverage, Kalen would always be vulnerable. Unless she became something more than just the protected. Lucy's wolf made the decision before her human mind caught up. She shifted back to human form and spoke with a voice that resonated with power she didn't know she possessed. Stop. Command. Alpha command, something that should have been impossible for a newly awakened wolf. But the mate bond channeled Kalen's dominance through her, amplifying it, and every wolf in the courtyard, rogue and guard alike, froze. Even Maddox hesitated, confused. You want to know what makes me powerful? Lucy's voice rang across the courtyard. Not my wolf. Not even my mate bond. It's that I've spent 21 years learning to survive in a world that wanted me dead. I've been beaten, starved, discarded, and sold. And I'm still standing. She walked forward, naked and unashamed as any wolf, until she stood between Kalen and the rogues. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to surrender. Or I'm going to show you exactly what a weak human can do when she finally stops holding back. Kieran laughed. You're bluffing. You just shifted for the first time. Lucy shifted again. But this time, something was different. Her wolf was larger, faster, and her fur blazed with silver light, the moon goddess's blessing made manifest. She was a true Luna, a queen wolf, born from the rarest of bonds. And she was done being underestimated. She hit Maddox like a silver comet. The battle that followed was brutal and swift. Lucy fought with a ferocity that shocked everyone, including herself. She wasn't the strongest, but she was smart, using terrain, momentum, the bond link with Kalen to coordinate attacks that left the rogues confused and bleeding. And Kalen? He fought like a god of war, decimating anyone who came near his mate. Together, they were unstoppable. Maddox fell first, throat torn out. The rogues scattered. And Kieran, seeing his plan crumble, tried to run. But Garrett caught him. Within minutes, it was over. The courtyard was littered with defeated rogues, and Kieran was in chains again, real ones this time. Lucy shifted back to human, exhausted and covered in blood that wasn't hers. Kalen caught her as her legs gave out, wrapping her in his arms and a discarded cloak. You magnificent, terrifying, perfect woman, he breathed against her hair. You just led your first battle. Did we win? She asked, suddenly very aware of how much everything hurt. We won. He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were blazing with pride and love and awe. You won. You, Lucy. The wolfless girl everyone underestimated just became the most powerful Luna this kingdom has ever seen. Around them, wolves began to howl, not in challenge, but in tribute. Recognition. Acceptance. And as the sun rose fully over the blood moon-packed territory, Lucy realized something. She'd finally found where she belonged. Not despite her past, but because of it. 3 months later, Lucy stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, watching the blood moon-packed train in the courtyard below. Her wolf hummed contentedly inside her, no longer a stranger, but a partner, a piece of herself she'd been missing her entire life. So much had changed since that bloody dawn when she discovered her power. Kieran had been executed for treason, Kalen's mercy exhausted after the second assassination attempt. It had been swift, honorable, and final. Lucy had stood beside Kalen during the judgment, her hand in his, a united front. She'd felt his grief through the bond, the pain of losing his last blood relative, but also his certainty that it was necessary. Being a ruler meant making impossible choices. She understood that now. House Grey had been stripped of its titles after Constance's role in the assassination plots came to light. Her stepfather had tried to claim ignorance, but the evidence was damning. They'd been exiled to the border territories alive, but powerless. Vivian had actually sent Lucy a letter, a rambling apology that spoke of regret and fear. Lucy had burned it. Some bridges weren't worth rebuilding. And Charlotte? She'd tried to return one final time, sneaking into the castle during a winter festival. She'd gotten as far as the main hall before Lucy's guards, her personal guard, wolves who'd sworn loyalty to their new Luna, had caught her. Please, Charlotte had begged, tears streaming down her face. I just wanted to apologize. To see if there was any chance. There isn't, Lucy had said quietly, firmly. Not because I'm cruel, but because you need to move on. Build a life that doesn't revolve around what you've lost. You're strong, Charlotte. Strong enough to start over. It was more grace than Charlotte deserved, but Lucy had learned that strength wasn't just about vengeance. Sometimes it was about knowing when to let go. Charlotte had left, and Lucy had heard she'd joined a pack in the Western Territories. She hoped the woman found peace. Everyone deserved that chance. You're thinking too hard. Kaelin's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. I can feel it through the bond. Your mind is spinning. Lucy leaned back into his warmth, smiling. Just remembering how far we've come. His lips brushed her neck, sending pleasant shivers through her. The wolfless bride who became the most formidable Luna in the realm. Yes, I'd say we've come far. It was true. Under Maven's guidance and Garrett's brutal training regimen, Lucy had transformed. She could shift at will now, fight with precision, and her unique connection to Kaelin gave her insights into pack dynamics that made her invaluable in council meetings. She'd gone from decoration to true partner, and the pack had noticed. More than that, they'd accepted her. It hadn't been immediate. There had been challenges, wolves who'd tested her authority, moments when she'd wanted to quit. But each time, Kaelin had been there, not to fight her battles, but to remind her she was capable of fighting them herself. The southern delegation arrives tomorrow, Kaelin murmured against her skin. Are you ready? Lucy turned in his arms, meeting those silver eyes she'd once feared. To negotiate the trade agreement we've been working on for months? Yes. To prove that the human girl your enemies mocked can secure the best deal this kingdom has seen in a decade. She grinned. Absolutely. Pride blazed in his expression. That's my queen. My queen. The words still thrilled her, even after 3 months. Because they weren't just a title anymore, they were truth. A commotion in the courtyard drew their attention. A young wolf, barely 16, was being carried in by her training partner, blood streaming from a gash on her leg. Lucy was moving before she thought, Kaelin right behind her. They reached the courtyard as the pack's healer, an elderly woman named Caroline, began examining the wound. She pushed too hard in training, the partner explained nervously. Tried a jump she wasn't ready for. I almost had it, the injured girl, Kira, gasped through tears of frustration. I just need to be stronger, faster. You need to be patient, Lucy said gently, kneeling beside her. She recognized that desperation, that need to prove yourself. Strength isn't just about power, Kira. It's about knowing your limits and pushing past them smartly. Not recklessly. Kira looked up at her with wide eyes, awe and hope mixing in her expression. But you're so strong, Your Majesty. Everyone says you went from Wolfless to Luna in a single day. That you fought Maddox the Exile and won. Lucy smiled softly. I fought with my pack and won. There's a difference. She touched the girl's hand. And I spent 21 years learning to survive before my wolf ever woke up. That foundation, those years of being weak, taught me more about real strength than any battle could. Don't rush your journey. Every struggle is teaching you something. Caroline finished bandaging the wound, and Kira was helped away, looking thoughtful rather than defeated. Kaelin watched the exchange with soft eyes. You're good at this. Being their Luna. Their leader. I had a good teacher, Lucy said, taking his hand. A ruthless king who taught me that real power is knowing when to be gentle. He laughed, a sound that still surprised her with its rarity and beauty. I taught you no such thing. You taught me that. Maybe they taught each other. Maybe that was what the mate bond really meant, not completing each other, but challenging each other to become better versions of themselves. That night, they hosted a feast in the Great Hall. Not a political dinner, but a celebration. Pack members gathered to honor the season's first hunt, to share stories, to simply be together. Lucy sat beside Kaylin at the high table, their hands intertwined beneath it, and looked out at the sea of faces. Wolves who'd once whispered about her weakness now laughed with her. Guards who doubted her now wore her colors with pride. And Maven, dear Maven, sat among the honored elders, tears of joy in her eyes. I never imagined this, Lucy whispered to Kaylin. Never let myself dream of having a home. A family. Belonging. Neither did I, he admitted, raising their joined hands to kiss her knuckles. I thought I was meant to be alone. That connection was weakness. His eyes held hers. You taught me it's the opposite. That love, real, terrifying, impossible love, is the greatest strength of all. Garrett stood, raising his glass. To the king and queen. To the bond that saved us all. To the future. To the future, the hall echoed. Lucy felt it then, through the bond, through the pack links, through her very soul. Home. Not a place, but a feeling. The certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Later, as they lay tangled together in the massive bed, the moon streaming through the windows, Kaylin traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. I love you, he murmured. In case I don't say it enough. I love you, Lucy. My mate. My queen. My salvation. She turned to face him, cupping his jaw. I love you too. Even when you're impossible and stubborn and too protective. Especially then? Especially then. His kiss was gentle this time, reverent, full of promises for all the tomorrows they'd fight for together. And as Lucy drifted to sleep in the arms of the man fate had chosen for her, she thought about the girl she'd been, scared, powerless, convinced she was a mistake. That girl would never have believed this ending was possible. But Lucy had learned the most important lesson of all. She was never a mistake. She was never a substitute. She was never wolfless. She was exactly who she needed to be, exactly when she needed to be it. And her story, their story, was just beginning. The best stories always are. Well, my loves, what did you think? Did Lucy and Kaylin's journey give you all the feels? Drop a comment below telling me your favorite moment, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more epic wolf shifter romances. Until next time, remember, you're stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of a love that would burn the world for you. See you in the next story.